This time on the Adventures of Tarka, we bid one final farewell to Curacao, head out to sea on a 3-day passage to Colombia, and get reminded that passages always have their ups and their downs. After such a long stay in Curacao, we were happy to be able to push off the dock and say goodbye. We gave the bridge operator a call on the VHF.
Queen Emma Bridge, this is the sailing vessel Tarka. Tarka, come in.
And soon after, he swung open the doorway to the ocean. We are sailing the 300 or so miles to Colombia, but first we are making the much shorter trip to Curaçao's most northern point to spend one night on the hook.
Fortunately, I forgot to check our autopilot before we left, our tiller pilot, and the connector I think has corroded, so that means that we're using our backup autopilot over here, and we didn't deploy the paddle for the wind vane before we left because we weren't planning on using it today. So what that means is we got a hand steer today, but it's only 4 hours of sailing, so it's not a big deal at all. But tomorrow we will fix it.
With the anchor down, we jumped in for a quick peek and got one last look at the lovely turtles here in Curacao. But new adventures await, and after a good swim and a beautiful sunset, we got one last good night of sleep before heading out to sea.
Yep, 3 days that way. Good morning, beautiful. Ready to go?
Hmm?
You ready to go?
Yes.
Yeah? What you doing up here?
Reading.
You're reading a
for
book.
some reason.
We have places to go. You can't sit here reading a book.
Oh, it's waiting for the wind.
Oh, the wind's here. I can feel it. We're going that way today. That's pretty exciting. Finally. It's been too long. Time to go somewhere new.
This passage should take about 3 days, and the conditions are typical for this area this time of year. Colombia's Caribbean waters have a sort of reputation in the sailing world, and parts of these waters are touted as being among the roughest of a typical east-to-west circumnavigation. So, with this in mind, we set off with a healthy amount of trepidation. However, the winds on the first day were a complete bust. With sails flopping and making barely 3 knots, we decided to give the spinnaker a go. It's actually a Jenniker, and, well, we've never used it, aside from taking it out for an inspection in Bonaire, and a bit of practice hoisting it. The trade winds have just always been more than enough, and we haven't really had the opportunity. But here was an opportunity. I went forward with the bag and hoisted the Jennifer up with its giant condom-like sock. I then pulled the lines up to raise the sock and reveal the chute. After a bit of flopping around, the sail filled with air, and for a split second was magnificent. But then... Luckily for us, we were barely moving when the spinnaker went for a swim, which made it extremely easy to recover. The culprit turned out to be a stainless steel rod that, to be fair, had experienced an unusual amount of corrosion stored deep in a cockpit locker for so long. The inner metal had become brittle, and it didn't take much for it to separate. Nonetheless, we were a bit down on our spirits. The passage had only just begun, we were hardly making any progress, and we had used up a lot of time getting things ready for the spinnaker, only to have to redeploy the sails. But then, the wind filled in, and not long after we were wing and wing making good progress. And soon after, we were even joined by a playful pod of dolphins. We don't see as many dolphins as a lot of other boats do. That's probably because Tarka is just too slow to be interesting for them. But today was different, and they had arrived just in time to lift our spirits and give us a proper send-off. I do like to think that dolphins are a sign of good luck on a passage.
You want this?
Yeah. Thank you. Alright, we got off to a little bit of a rocky start on our first passage in quite a long time. And saw some dolphins, lost our spinnaker overboard for a little while, and now I'm pretty tired, so I'm going to take a nap. And Nusha's going to go on watch and keep an eye on Tarka for me. So this will be nice. I get to sleep more than 20 minutes. Maybe a whole hour if I'm lucky.
It wasn't long before Curacao was out of sight behind us, and though we'd be passing north of Aruba, it was not yet in view.
I don't think we can see any land anymore.
I don't think so either.
So everywhere around us is the ocean.
That's true.
This was my first sunset on Passage, and it was beautiful. But the sunset means it will also soon be dark. And with all the sounds and the movements of the wind in the ocean, that can be a bit scary.
So after this sunset it's gonna be dark.
Yep.
Really dark.
Well, the moon's out, so it won't be that dark.
Yeah.
But there's no avoiding the night, and Tarka sailed quickly into the darkness on a broad reed. At night we added second reefs as necessary, and had a rule that no one was allowed out of the cockpit without waking the other person up first, which luckily didn't happen too often. The next morning arrived and I got lucky with the morning watch. If there's anything better than a sunset at sea, then it is definitely a sunrise at sea.
I made a video like that yesterday morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I had a good time in here because the sun went up.
Yeah.
And it's nice to watch,
nice.
and now I'm awake because it's light. Yeah,
This is really calm.
It is.
Only doing 4.5.
Yeah.
But
It's day 2 of our trip to Colombia. The seas are pretty calm this morning and the wind's pretty light. So I went ahead and configured our wind vane to steer the boat. That way we can charge our batteries a little bit more, because the autopilot was working pretty hard last night to keep us on course because we had too much sail up for a while. And it draws quite a bit of power actually, but the wind vane only draws wind power, so it's pretty nice. We were down to 86% last night, and this morning we're starting to climb back up. I think we'll be at 100% before 2 if we're not using the autopilot. Yeah, it's okay. It's a pretty boring day out here, which is probably a good thing when it comes to sailing, at least. Pretty calm seas, 10 to 15 knots, making 4.5, 5 knots of speed, and I think we'll arrive on schedule if we keep this up. We'll see.
along the way, we passed the time by reading books and playing cards. And almost before we knew it, another day at sea came to a close. And another night began. Good morning.
It's about 5:30 in the morning. The sun should be coming up shortly. It's been a little bit rough tonight considering how calm it was all day. And I actually ended up turning off, I ended up disconnecting the wind vane because we were weaving a little bit too much and it wasn't very comfortable. The seas have grown probably double in size since sunset. It should be getting calmer here, at least in terms of the waves, I hope. But we're also getting closer to the coast of Colombia, which has a reputation, so we'll see.
Even though it was a bit rolly and uncomfortable, the sunrise always marks a new day, and always promising the possibility of better conditions. And anyway, this isn't so bad.
Good morning.
As the day progressed, Mother Nature decided to play a game of you get what you ask for, and the winds became very calm. The flopping mainsail became quite annoying, and so we switched to jib only. That's okay though, because we weren't in a hurry anyway. Our friends already in Santa Marta have told us that the winds frequently gust over 50 knots during the evenings and nights in that area, so it is best if we time our arrival in the morning, and there was no hope of us arriving on this day.
One and a half knots.
And so, we decided to sail jib only for the remainder of the trip and take it easy.
Pillow looks really soft.
Oh yeah.
We didn't see any other sailboats, and in fact, this big ship in the distance was the only vessel we saw on the whole passage. I wonder if they saw us. Eventually the winds filled back in, and with it came the seas, both of which would continue to increase through the night.
This should be our last night on the boat, unless something goes horribly wrong, which we don't plan on it. Tomorrow morning we should be in Colombia. Tonight might get interesting though, from what we've heard. So we'll keep an eye on things.
That kept moving all night.
What's the moving on there?
Yeah.
That was a pretty rough night.
The night was our roughest of the whole passage, and in the morning we found the deck covered with baby flying fish. We don't really get the big ones on Tarka. I think they just flop themselves over the edge, but the babies get stuck. Happy to have that night behind us, we were rewarded with the first glimpse of Colombia, the towering snow-capped mountains of the Sierra Nevada range. And as we got closer, the foothills to Santa Marta became more well-defined. But the ocean wasn't quite done with us yet, and the confused seas continued to throw little Tarka around. As we made our turn around the point, the winds began to increase from 20 to 25 to 30 and probably capped off at near gale conditions. Even with only a sliver of the jib, Tarka was still making 5 to 6 knots, and we were getting wet. So I opted to keep my clothes clean and salt-free, while Nusta hunkered down below. But as has been the theme of this passage, with each trial has come reward, and as we rounded the point and the winds began to abate, we were welcomed to Colombia by another playful pod of dolphins. As we drew closer to Santa Marta, the seas finally became flat. We called up the Port Authority to announce our arrival.
Okay, I copy. Thank you. Welcome to Santa Marta. Please contact Santa Marta Marine.
And then contacted the marina to see if they had a slip for us, as anchoring isn't really a safe option here.
He's coming to greet us.
A tender came out to greet us and guide us into a slip, and we were happy to be on solid ground once again.
Well, after a rather rough passage, we made it to Santa Marta. And now we have the fun job of cleaning everything because it all got wet.